Emily was pacing around the dark kitchen of the old communal apartment like a scared cat, constantly glancing out the unwashed window. For any normal woman, the arrival of her mother-in-law is not the most joyful event. But for Emily, it was a real catastrophe, and not at all because her relative was insane. Too much had happened since their last meeting, and the young woman simply did not know what to do. In the hallway, the doorbell croaked hoarsely, and Emily froze in fear for a second, then tiptoed to the door. Maybe I just won't open it. A cowardly thought crept into her head, and she lurked. She heard the familiar, "Emily, it's me," and sighed with relief. Finally, it's Lisa, her friend, who will definitely come up with something. Worried Lisa squeezed into the cramped hallway and grimly stared at the hostess. "Well, what's the emergency? I rushed over like there was a fire." And Emily, grabbing her by the hand, dragged her into her room. Of course, the neighbors are at work, but the walls have ears too. The young woman made big eyes and whispered, "Just imagine, Barbara Johnson is coming. She doesn't know that Tom and I got divorced." Lisa slowed down by the unpainted white door and yanked her hand away. "She's coming here?" Staring frightened at Emily, she also switched to whispering. Emily nodded dejectedly. "Yes, she called me an hour ago. I dictated the address, and she didn't even ask." Lisa shook her head. "And why is she coming?" "That's just it," Emily frowned. "The last time her mother-in-law came to visit them from Chicago was a year ago. They had a terrible fight back then, a huge scandal. Barbara Johnson didn't like absolutely everything about her son's family, his unkempt appearance, how the girls were raised, how they welcomed her, the Queen Mother. Although the last one was her main grievance, and the rest was an overlay on the well-worn road, after all, the quarrelsome woman imagined a lot more. Although the daughter-in-law was all affability and only didn't grovel before the dear guest. In any case, the women took offense, and this time Tom suddenly took his mother's side, although she was blatantly wrong. For some reason, he decided that if Emily does not respect his mother, then she does not love him either, and that's why everything at his job is going badly, too. Then the husband left for a week, without showing his face, and called only to announce that he had another woman and that they needed to break up. Emily didn't try to hold on to him, and it's already been 6 months since she bought this place in the communal apartment. Everything that she managed to buy after dividing their 2-room apartment. Lisa's raspy ring brought Emily out of her thoughts. She anxiously rushed to Lisa. "That's her!" she screamed hysterically. "Maybe we shouldn't open up. How will I explain everything to her?" But her friend resolutely pushed her into the hallway. "Open up! That's it! You'll explain it all to your mother-in-law. Don't be scared. I'm here with you." With bated breath, Emily stepped to the door and decisively turned the key with another trill of the bell. "Hello, Barbara Johnson," she said softly and respectfully, stepping aside. "Why did it take you so long to open up?" the stern woman asked instead of greeting, pulling an expensive suitcase behind her. Emily shook her head in denial. "I was talking to a friend." Barbara Johnson briefly glanced at Lisa and contemptuously pursed her lips. "Where's Tom?" "At work," the daughter-in-law shrieked. "I don't know." The woman arched her artfully penciled eyebrows. "What do you mean you don't know where your own husband is?" And here Lisa stepped forward. "Well, Tom hasn't been her husband for a while now." Interest lit up in Barbara Johnson's eyes. "Is that so? And who is he then?" Lisa took a deep breath and blurted out, "No one! They got divorced!" Oh, how Lisa liked the look on the fancy lady's face at that moment. Those rounding eyes, that drooping smile, that helpless gaze. Her whole life, Lisa had dreamed of spitting out something like this to her mother-in-law, but didn't get a chance. So, let her chew on this. Afterward, they were sitting in the kitchen, Emily and Lisa, looking like frightened teenage girls, and the shocked Barbara Johnson sulking. But suddenly she seemed to wilt, becoming frankly elderly. The news they dumped on her was just too incredible. The divorce, the division of the apartment, the fact that Tom left for another woman, and that they are expecting a child. Wait, what about child support payments? The mother-in-law interrupted her mournful silence, and Emily distantly stared out the window. It's difficult times at his job. He promised to repay everything later. Emily started making excuses for her ex-husband, and Barbara Johnson sadly looked around the shabby kitchen. So he took away the apartment from the children, she uttered, and Emily shrugged. Maybe he didn't want to upset you. Maybe, Barbara Johnson echoed hollowly and got up. Too bad I didn't catch the girls. They are at kindergarten. Emily nodded affirmatively, and the woman rolled her suitcase towards the exit. Barbara Johnson was walking down the sidewalk, gazing thoughtfully at her feet. Something like this was what she imagined. That's why she came up with this business trip. Lately, her phone conversations with her son have been very strange. For some reason, Tom had started calling her every month like clockwork and kept complaining over and over again about them not having enough space in their two-room apartment for 4 people. Knowing how the grandmother loved them, he would tell her that they were doing well, but they lacked a bigger apartment, especially for the girls' school desks. What alerted her in particular was a recent conversation with her son. As usual, Tom asked about his mommy's health and went into the familiar refrain. We're doing well, too. It's just Emma will be going to school soon, and there's nowhere to put a desk if only we had a bigger apartment. But there's no money and nowhere to get it from. You know what tiny salaries we make, and there's no prospects, he would say, trying to garner her sympathy. It's ridiculous. The girls even wrote a letter to Santa Claus asking him to give them a bigger apartment. Don't forget to add that the girls are constantly asking about their grandmother and wondering about her health. That was a subtle move, aimed at her maternal instincts. Barbara Johnson had nearly cried at that point. Oh, they still remember their dear grandma. And her son knew exactly what he was doing. He was sure that Mom would feel sorry for them and solve their housing problem. He even pointed her in a direction to focus her efforts. For example, you could sell your vacation home in Aspen. That would be just enough for a 4-bedroom apartment in New York. I checked. But I don't even dare ask that of you. I know how much you love your vacation home. Her caring son lamented into the phone receiver. Nearly a whole year he worked on her over the phone. If only she knew who he was actually working for. But having arrived in New York, she finally grasped the true state of affairs. 2 months passed, and one day the long-awaited call came in Barbara Johnson's Chicago apartment. After her trip, Tom hadn't made himself known for a while, but apparently he missed her. Hi, Mom. How are you? His voice was excited and suffering. The elderly woman smirked, preparing herself to listen to another story about his hard life. But Tom suddenly went on the offensive. I just had an idea. What if we actually sell your vacation home like you suggested, remember? Barbara Johnson yawned peacefully. Will he never calm down? And when did she suggest anything like that to him? But she answered calmly, Oh no, there's no vacation home, son. On the other end, he got really upset. It burned down? No, thank God. So what happened then? The elderly woman poured herself a glass of light wine. I sold it a month ago. Tom's voice in the receiver grew barely audible. You already sold it? And the money? Barbara Johnson could barely keep from laughing. I bought an apartment, a 4-bedroom one like you asked, for the children, your children. It was as if the phone in the woman's hand went mad. What children? My children? How can you do that? They are still small. Why did you do that? For 10 minutes, the woman listened to her son's groans and rebukes for not consulting him, and then calmly said, I'm sorry, Tim. I did as you wanted. I didn't consult you because I didn't find you at home when I came to visit. There was an anxious silence on the other end. And then the son cautiously asked, Mom, when did you come to visit? And having heard the answer, he nearly burst out crying into the receiver. Wait, Mom, It's like something darkened before my eyes. No, I'm fine. It's just the emotions. Thank you, Mom. Barbara Johnson had long since hung up, and Tom still sat there holding the silent phone to his ear. Emily managed to worm her way into her trust, even though he calculated and staged everything. That stupid fight. Ah, women. Women. And Barbara Johnson stood by the huge window looking at the drizzling rain outside. She did everything right. Her daughter-in-law and granddaughters don't deserve to wander around homeless because of her son's dishonesty, like she once wandered around with little Tom after her husband betrayed her. You know, the boy is copying his father's behavior, even though he doesn't even know him. It's a pity his mother-in-law believed her back then, and that lout big guy can take care of himself. He's a grown man already. Let him learn responsibility for his actions. Subscribe to our channel and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one.